It's undeniable that that is where the majority of consumption is happening, especially amongst younger audiences. With that, the publisher opportunity is to create more transaction flexibility and allow this programmatic model. Publishers have to find this sweet spot between price and transparency. The opportunity is for more publishers who have non-gaming content to distribute their app, monetize their app through ads. That will also create opportunities for brands to connect with consumers where they are on their phones.
Bonjour and welcome to the Pubway podcast. We have a special episode today for you, filming from beautiful Cannes Lion Festival. My name is Tina Iannacchino.
And I'm Mike Villalobos. And today we're going to be covering how CTV streaming is actually emerging amongst other digital channels while creating new monetization for publishers. Whilst all that happening, having to require transparency, performance, and measurement in new ways we've never seen before.
And joining us today is the lovely Chandra Cirulnick from Yahoo DSP. Hi, Chandra. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm glad to be joining you.
And before we dive into all our fun topics, if you could tell us a little bit more about your role at Yahoo and a bit about your career background, just for some context for our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at Yahoo DSP. I lead our strategic partnerships, focusing specifically on supply partnerships globally. I've been at Yahoo for 11 years now.
Wow, an era.
It hasn't been Yahoo the whole time. I started in 2015, really focusing on our SSP business. I led our buyer development team. And at the time, it was actually AOL. Shortly thereafter, Verizon acquired Yahoo and made us Verizon Media. And so I co-led the first actually combined sales team across AOL and Yahoo at the time under that buyer development. So it was a great experience, and that's where I really learned about what's most important to buyers when they're thinking about programmatic media strategies. We worked a lot with holding companies and understood what they're looking for in terms of transparency and deal curation and deal structures. And so I loved that. I did that for many years. I moved over to our SSP business, leading publisher sales for a short period of time, and then in 2023 after we had gone private, we made the decision to sunset the SSP portion of our business to focus entirely on our DSP. So with that sole focus, we're 100% committed to the DSP sector, and I stepped into this role leading supply partnerships at the time. So it's a nice kind of combination of those things.
So you know where all the bodies are buried at Yahoo, basically.
I mean, yeah.
I think what's been really interesting this week is we're seeing for the first time in maybe ever, CTV or connected TV, streaming TV is starting to overtake linear, right? And there's a lot of trends happening there. We'd love to hear from you. What are you seeing on the publisher side to, I think facilitate that monetization, whether it be home screen ads, pause ads, there's so many different formats that are available now beyond just the typical like run of the mill ad spot. Would love to hear from you. What are you seeing from both pub side, but also just innovation on like monetization?
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, to your point, the consumer trends around streaming versus linear. There's some methodology differences that put the percentages in different places, but it's undeniable that that is where the majority of consumption is happening, especially amongst younger audiences. And so when we think about like, where does investment from an advertiser perspective go? It's increasingly in streaming. And the great thing for advertisers is that with streaming comes this opportunity to speak to your audience in a much more, one-to-one or household level format. And also be able to think about TV as a bigger part of the marketing mix other than just brand awareness. And so with that, the publisher opportunity is to create more transaction flexibility and allow this programmatic model. And so to your point, like we have seen so many formats open up to programmatic access than had typically happened in the past. So we are seeing pause ads come into the format. We're seeing things like home screen placements, shoppable ads, live events and sports. And all of that just allows advertisers to incorporate that into their bigger buy, have it be addressable, manage reach and frequency, more holistically across all of the fragmented pieces of the ecosystem, and then tie it back to outcomes in a much better way than we've been able to in a historically.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on vertical video? I feel like every couple years it has a resurgence, but then the dollars don't always necessarily follow. Are you seeing any more activity on that format specifically?
I've had a few conversations about vertical video
Yeah.
this week already.
Yeah.
We don't see a huge amount of adoption for that now, but I don't know why, because those assets certainly exist. Maybe it's an education thing, but it's certainly something that we're looking at. We support the format in the DSP. There's just like very small adoption of it today.
Yeah, well, the budgets are probably stuck in the walled gardens, so it would make sense. But someone was telling me this week, in EMEA at least, apparently like really short form vertical video movies are catching traction, like short 30-second comedy shows or dramedies. Yeah. So it's definitely something to watch in the coming months.
What's fascinating, and this is more user experience, but I saw a vertical video on CTV, and it struck me first as odd, but also oddly comforting or like familiar. Um, I guess back to the question of like, are you seeing folks trying to replace social or not replace, but like reuse social assets inside of the CTV environment, or is it just more traditional as it stands within your formats?
Most of the big brands are going to have their TV focused creative assets. With things like AI and a lot of the great creative services that have kind of spun out from that technology, it's opened up TV and the creative that you need for TV to be accessible to a broader set of advertisers. But the true like repurposing of social assets into CTV is still probably an edge case. Um, I think it's great for performance marketers who don't have that kind of creative budget and production budget. So it's something that I think is going to continue to happen.
Yep.
But there was nothing like a great produced
Or someone wants
video
to be
spot.
avant-garde and just go on their own little venture of having vertical video on purpose. Do you see programmatic actually changing the landscape as well? Because you talked about reach and frequency earlier, right? I think that's such a big unification point because you're now able to control all the levers across your core channels of 9 to 12 channels, whatever you may have. Do you see programmatic really monetizing in a better way, changing the way upfronts are being bought?
Absolutely, and some of that ties back to, performance, but also that barrier to entry, right? So, for publishers thinking about how do I monetize this growing swath of streaming inventory that includes not just like traditional streamers and broadcasters, but also tons of fast channels that are being made available, um, and even across devices, not only CTV TV screens, but also OTT apps where younger generations are spending a lot of time watching TV. So there's this ability now for outside of the upfronts, even this incremental demand opportunity of marketers who couldn't participate in an upfront because they didn't have the budget power or the investment level. But now that barrier to entry has been greatly reduced. So we don't need to think about a national spot versus a local spot. Now it's actually which households do I want to reach? And maybe there are 50,000 of them and not 5 million, right?
Yeah.
So that creates an opportunity, and then that the upfront process lives, and then there's this whole like supplementary market that comes into play.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, advertisers are always looking for transparency and measurable business outcomes for their campaigns. So, how are you seeing those expectations influence how publishers are packaging everything together, full and monetization, measurement for their streaming inventory specifically?
Yeah, I think about transparency in like two different ways, and one is as a buyer, what content are my ads being delivered in, and do I know that ahead of time or do I know that after the fact? And then the second one is transparency around performance. So on the first topic, thinking about transparency of content, publishers have to find this sweet spot between price and transparency. And so there's a scenario, I think, for almost every publisher where they're both supply rich and demand rich at the same time, but not necessarily within the same exact content.
Yeah.
So there's a great opportunity to package up at the genre level or maybe at a portfolio level and offer a lower price point at times. And
More like
then
run of network versus premium versus
exactly, or packaged across sports or entertainment or news.
yeah.
And then there's also this opportunity to get very granular, even we're even seeing like programmatic sponsorships become available now of certain shows or top shows. So that will obviously come at a higher price point. And so as a advertiser, I think that is to be expected, but there's increasingly more and more um emphasis around, at least after the fact, really understanding where were my ads placed, because that helps us inform for the future. How did that perform? And then what do I want to think about from a packaging perspective the next time I place the buy?
So you mentioned fast channels earlier, which I think whether you like it or not, people are starting to adopt it more and more. And then on the flip side of that, the open web, generally speaking, has had a variance of constraints. Right, you have 17 different legislations in the U.S. You have GDPR coming out in EMEA, and then Latin America having their own respective, I would say challenges, but more again constraints. Right, how do you see the convergence of one single endpoint, meaning you can go across now programmatic across all of them, but fast channels emerging, reshaping how monetization is viewed? Do you feel like monetization is changing any strategies for publishers or even advertisers, or is it relatively the same?
So I think that's also this there's this packaging element where um if you're a publisher that owns a combination of assets across fast or even like a scaled AVOD platform, then combined with more of a HVOD, subscription based service, there's so much great content that lives in all of those places and the ability to get more targeted from a contextual perspective when you look across all of those. So, something that we're seeing like in the fast space, live events in sports that are maybe not the very biggest, to have the broadest fandom, but have highly engaged, really enthusiastic, leaned in audiences. And so there you go. Well, I mean, even things like F1, right? Like there's very little F1 availability for ads in the US particularly, but there's a fast channel dedicated to F1 Academy and a lot of content around F1. And so for people who are very huge F1 fans, they're going there to get that content. And to them, they're not thinking this is a fast channel versus, this is the streamer that I paid for necessarily. So being able to kind of bundle those things across the board, especially if you're then trying to align your brand around that type of an audience or that type of an event, it's a great opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's shocking that we've made it almost 15 minutes without saying the words AI, the acronym AI, I should say. Yeah, yeah. But obviously, it's kind of the elephant in the room for a lot of publishers that their search traffic is on the decline more often than not. And they're looking for additional monetization opportunities to better diversify their audiences. And we are at least seeing a renewed interest or surge in app. And I'm curious how you see mobile app fitting into an effective omni-channel monetization strategy for a publisher today.
Yeah, we've seen that too. And there's so much time being spent in app. It's been kind of an under indexed format or channel rather. And we're mostly seeing in app as part of an omni-channel strategy that for most brand advertisers that are including in app within their campaigns, but not necessarily carving out a dedicated budget or strategy for an app specifically.
Yeah.
So the opportunity is for more publishers who have non-gaming content to distribute their app, monetize their app through ads. That will also create opportunities for brands to connect with consumers where they are on their phones, because the in-app ecosystem has been really dominated by gaming and casual gaming, and endemic advertisers in that space tend to be willing to pay very high prices and really kind of dominate the ecosystem. So it doesn't necessarily make sense for a toothpaste advertiser to bid against another game advertiser within a gaming environment. So for that reason, I think extending more content into the app space and making that available as an ad channel makes a lot of sense. Um, and then there are really interesting things that we can say, like going back to F1 as an example, so much adjacent content around that sport or around any live event. The Knicks just won, so any like
Say a
sports
louder, please,
app.
for the people in the back.
Yeah.
Nick's just one, in case I didn't heard
Yeah,
that.
it's fine. Go Knicks. But yeah, like there's so much engagement around those cultural moments or events that really that content then extends across. People aren't thinking about the channels that they're engaging with. They just want to get more content and be involved in the thing that they're passionate about. So I think again, just kind of like bundling and packaging around what's relevant in the world right now, what is relevant from a content perspective, um, and pushing that out to consumers and driving that adoption will create more ad opportunities.
You bring up a really good point around cultural moments, and I think in the same theme of just more emerging channels as well. Audio has been, I think, one of the ones that has really kind of pushed boundaries in the sense that you have 3 to 4 hours listening every single day across podcasting, music, commuting. Yes, you're doing multiple things at once, likely, but I think it's really emerging into now Netflix adopting audio as like a visual actual representation. You have folks like the Breakfast Club now being basically a talk show in the morning, which is old school, but now becoming streaming. What should publishers be paying attention to when it comes to that, right? Because I think to your point on live sports, now it's just like live talking, I guess. How does that become an opportunity, and what are things they should look out for as well?
Yeah, we've seen an explosion in podcasts, and both like as consumers, but then also just the from a programmatic advertising perspective. Going back 2-ish years ago, the majority of ads in podcasts were host read, and with dynamic ad insertion now and programmatic capabilities, we've got a lot of scale in podcasts, which is great. And yeah, to your point, so much discussion around cultural moments and live sports and content TV shows, right? Like how many shows have a after show recap that's official and then tons of spin-offs that are maybe not the official versions but that people go to hear more and engage in that fandom. Um so yeah, lots of growth. And the other thing that's come with it are really um better tools for understanding the episode level context of a podcast. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the official show for House of the Dragon, but instead it could be an episode of a different podcast where they have a conversation about
I almost
that.
prefer that because you want the hot takes, the weird takes.
You do, and you also want scale and
Correct. Yeah.
audience diversity.
Yep.
And so like that allows you to cast a broader net.
Yep. And I will say, like with LLMs the way they are now, transcription just becomes part of that model, right? And it might as well just it's a modality, but it might as well just be a web page at this point because you're able to transcribe it, pull it, and then unify it with what other buys, whether it be maybe closed caption on CTV or web-based scraping, whatever it may be. There's so many possibilities to just unify it now. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's what better way to capture the zeitgeist of a specific audience?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Amazing. I think I'm not sure if Mike, you have any other questions you want to ask today.
Um, I think it was more of any hot takes that you have for this year, I think, or hot takes for Can.
Oh, yes.
It's hot.
That's
Double
fair,
tap
yeah.
on the hot.
Okay, well, I think we'll end off on this. Is like, what's the best and worst advice you've gotten? And let's put this in the context of best and worst advice in Can and best and worst advice in your career to keep it more broad as well.
Okay. All right. Thinking on the spot here.
Yeah.
Best advice in Can, wear flats, which might not be relevant for you, but Tina, I know you feel me on that.
Yeah.
Worst advice I can is like try to do everything. There's just no way. There's no way. You can't say yes to everything. Yes, it's a week. You want to, but you can't squeeze it all in. So
You need a plan for serendipity too, because those are the best interactions and moments that you can get.
that's true. In my career, I feel fortunate to not have gotten a lot of very bad advice. Um, but I will say the best advice is, I think, has been start with the objective. You know what? When we all get a lot of requests, a lot of asks to fix things, solve problems, enable certain features or enable capabilities. And I think taking the time to stop and take a step back and say, what are you trying to achieve? Because there might be more than one path to that outcome, and maybe there's a very specific one and that's the one, but let's think about it so we can be more strategic and thoughtful about the process to get
Leading
there.
with the why, basically, right? So you're not having a meeting about a meeting about a meeting. It is just working backwards from the solution or from the issue rather. I really do like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Chandra, thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your festival this week, and we'll see you around soon.
We'll see you at
Yep.
Tiesto. Just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, so right. See you there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.